After growing up in Newcastle, these days Catherine Britt calls the US city of Tennessee home. But it's a reception like the one she got at her old primary school of St. Joseph's that keeps her coming home. Even though things seem quite different.
It is absolutely the weirdest thing ever. I'm looking around and I remember this. It was so much bigger when I was a child.
The 21-year-old returns to the US in a few weeks, but could be back as early as October to attend the prestigious ARIA Awards.
It's my second nomination. My first one was when I was really young, and of course Casey Chambers won. And so this year she's not in it, so I kind of maybe have a chance, I don't know yet.
Meanwhile, at the John Hunter Hospital Starlight Room, some very deserving fans received a visit from their idols, pop group Girl Band and Natalie Bassingthwaite from the Rogue Traders. Surprisingly, it was an amateur who stole the show. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
For an issue that divides the city, the Premier thought he had the $20 million solution.
It is designed to achieve a sustainable solution and a practical future for public transport services in Newcastle CBD.
When State Cabinet dropped in February, Morris Yemma was committed to delivering his solutions.
And now we're about investing serious dollars to upgrade the rail services and the infrastructure.
However, today's release of how $18.5 million of that money will be spent wasn't what some expected. It certainly didn't resemble the state government's illustration of the Hunter Business Chamber's light rail proposal to reconnect the city with the harbour.
Really, I think Premier Yemma and Minister Costa should be insulted by what's been put forward.
Amongst what Newcastle will get is an extension of the platforms at Civic, Wickham and Hamilton, even though Wickham will only be used by half of the Sydney services that pass through the station. 4 level crossings along the stretch get an overhaul as part of a roadworks package, and 35 years later there's still no advance on Labor's Stewart Avenue overpass promise. In fact, the Yemma government now appears to be looking to the Railway Street Wickham level crossing as a pressure valve. Business argues the CBD and commuters have all missed out.
And really, it doesn't help our public transport system. It still maintains that barrier between the old city and the new.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
The Newcastle Ocean Baths construction site could lie dormant for the next few weeks at least. The $3.2 million restoration is now on hold after recent work uncovered concerns about the structural integrity of the building, which is riddled with concrete cancer.
It's like renovating an old house. You don't know what you're going to find until you start the work. There are some elements of the steel rods that are corroded inside the concrete.
The General Manager must now await a report from structural engineers within the next few weeks before she takes the results back to Council to assess their options.
It's an icon, it's heritage listed, it's an important project. But if the evidence says that it can't be treated successfully, then we have to have another look at it.
But Councillor Aaron Buman isn't surprised by the new findings. He believes the ocean baths were too far gone, saying restoration was a waste of ratepayers' dollars.
I spoke to council staff. I sent a 2-page letter to all councillors saying that this is bad advice. Common sense must prevail and the building should come down, as sad as that is.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The old wharf out the front may be falling down, but the timber cargo shed looks like a new pin. It's been restored to house the Newcastle Maritime Museum collection that used to be displayed at Fort Scratchley. The old shed has been jazzed up with some trendy glass doors and windows, but still maintains the industrial feel of its heritage.
We've realised how much our collections represent the industrial nature of Newcastle, and so we think that we've captured that in the shed.
A team of 60 volunteers are toiling in a nearby shed to get the extensive collection ready.
They're either refurbishing and fixing up, polishing and putting all those finishing touches on objects, or they're researching the data, planning the stories and working with other groups around town to get things ready. So we're basically getting ready to move in.
The museum, which is nestled among honeysuckle's high-rises, now has to raise another $2 million to rebuild the wharf. Meantime, the Newcastle National Maritime Festival will be held on the 8th of October, featuring a naval troop carrier and 2 tall ships. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Crowned New South Wales Apprentice of the Year, Karen Hourigan today stepped towards her next challenge, entering her submission for the national title.
Sometimes I even just look at the little trophy on above the TV and it's like, whoa, still hasn't really sunk in, but yeah, I guess national, it's too hard to think about.
Employed by Energy Australia in 1993 as its first ever female motor mechanic, the 33-year-old is now studying her advanced diploma in electrical. Having worked in 2 male-dominated industries for 13 years, Karen Hourigan is a keen ambassador for women in non-traditional trades.
I guess speaking to people who are interested in following an apprenticeship, I probably more people can identify with what I've done.
Karen says while younger girls are swayed from entering the industry by its male-dominant perception, increasing numbers of mature-age women are taking up apprenticeships.
Maybe it's when they become mature age and they think, well, that sort of drops away a bit and that's when they decide to do it. But yeah, there is a lot more support now. There's a lot of equal employment opportunity policies and things in place.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Given the name Mr. Mistopheles by shelter staff, this domestic short-hair cat is making a steady recovery after a week-long ordeal locked in a cage without food, water or anywhere to go to the toilet.
Amazed, angry, shocked that somebody could have so little thought for another life.
Terry Ford and his work crew from Newcastle Council found the trembling cat behind this green waste dump at the back of the Stockton Sports Oval. They'd seen the cage a week earlier, but didn't realise it had a cat locked inside.
Pretty putrid, actually. It looked like been there for at least a week. Yeah, he absolutely stunk.
He was given a good bath by staff at the RSPCA shelter in Newcastle and has been washing himself ever since.
It's not a nice feeling to think that someone's dumped it there and left it. They could have taken it to the RSPCA or done something like that instead of just leaving it there.
After such an ordeal, it's hoped the good-natured 5-year-old tomcat will be adopted by a caring family.
And we'll hold him for 7 days, just in case there is an owner out there that's looking for him. And then hopefully we'll try and find him a new home.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Having conceded 10 goals in 4 games, coach Nick Theodorakopoulos isn't pulling punches as he attempts to plug the holes. The captain says the side is improving, but the blame can't fall only on the back 4.
I think we've got to just improve generally as a team defending, and that starts from up front. And if we can eliminate, these silly mistakes that we've been making.
Returning from a 4-week layoff last week against Sydney, Socceroo Jade North will add further quality to the backs.
I was slightly worried leading up to the match, but he pulled through okay and he's significantly stronger for this week.
The Central Coast's dry spell also cause for concern, with the Jets facing the embarrassing prospect of conceding the Mariners' first goal.
We don't want to concede goals against anybody. We do know that Central Coast have failed to score, but what we do know is Central Coast is a very, very good team.
Injuries to Joel Griffiths and Vaughan Coveney mean 2-goal hero Milton Rodriguez will start up front alongside Mark Bridge. Meanwhile, the club's goalkeeping saga continues. Ben Kennedy is still the side's only keeper, with the FFA refusing to register Ivan Nichevsky until the club resolves an issue with a previous signing. The Jets plan to appeal the decision, but the situation could drag on, with an appeal date to be set for after the 9th of October. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. Broadmeadow as beautiful as ever for the running of the 100th Newcastle Gold Cup. With 5 straight wins, the early money was on Bicky Tin Blues. With strapper Tammy Blair in his corner, Bicky Tin's very own horse whisperer had a special technique for the big occasion. With Tammy on song, Brian Smith was confident of claiming the $190,000 prize.
You know, if he settles in the run, which he should do, and the track's good, no excuses.
Trainer Chris Lees carried local hopes with Exonite and County Tyrone.
I don't care which one wins, you know. I suppose it'd be lovely for County Tyrone to win, but as long as I can win, it'd be great.
Here's the closing stages of the Cup.
Bicky Tin Blues and Exonite from Old County Tyrone. Bicky Tin Blues running about all over the track, but the rejuvenated old fella wins the Cup. Bicky Tin Blues has beaten Exonite in respect.
The tears flowed for Tammy, and despite some anxious moments in the straight, Bicky Tin did enough to give the rest of the field the blues.
Just wanted to veer out a little bit. He's 8-year-old, he's feeling his joints sort of thing, and no, he knuckled down well.
Trainer Brian Smith overwhelmed with the win after personally overcoming cancer to rebuild his career.
When you've got to fight back from ill health and come through everything and get a nice horse that's not doing the right thing, and then he puts 6 together, that's amazing.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's called Try a Trade Day, and these Year 9 students are being shown the ins and outs.
To here, to in behind and back to there.
The stalls cater for teenagers who are contemplating trade-based careers. Here they're able to play with their food, and we're told that's very much part of the appeal.
They're not being lectured to, they're not being given brochures, they're actually coming in, they're having a go.
Excellent, that's very good.
There's a worldwide skilled labour shortage.
Before we mark, check it twice.
As for the hunter, it's screaming out for sheet metal workers and computer techs.
So our young people are very fortunate that there are going to be job opportunities.
From today's electricians to tomorrow's sparkies, these kids learning the basics as part of this Electrical Safety Week.
If we can keep these kids safe, they're also going to pass on their knowledge that they learn in the classroom onto their parents and siblings.
Electricity flows through wires to
give light bulbs a glow.
It's a very simple lesson, yet the message generated is very important.
I've learnt that water and electricity don't mix.
Adam McHilrick, NBN News.
It's no secret the arrival of Milton Rodriguez at Newcastle has come as a real blessing for everyone at the club. Coach Nick Theodorakopoulos knows he has a match winner on his hands, but was forced to refute reports today that he was under pressure for not actually winning one this season.
That's only to fill pages.
It's not like he hasn't got enough to worry about already, given the club's self-described farcical nature of several off-field issues. You could hardly pin the side's poor start on the coach.
I believe Nick will be given the time, yeah.
But still no time frame on when new goalkeeper Ivan Nasevsky will be cleared by the FFA to play, leaving their club with just one gloveman in 19-year-old Ben Kennedy for another week at least.
Now, that's not ideal, but I've just got to blot it out, because if I keep thinking about it like I did early on, it really takes you down a dead-end street.
Their opposition tomorrow night, the Mariners, have their own concerns. Winless this season, they haven't scored a goal either, going some 553 minutes of football without finding the net.
You know, at training, they fly in, it's during the game that's a problem. So now we've been working on that, and just confidence, just getting the boys confident in each other and making runs for each other.
My biggest fear is that we don't contribute to them breaking the duck.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. One of the club's quiet achievers, centre George Carmont, was also one of Newcastle's most consistent performers all season. It's earned him a spot in the Samoan side for the coming 4-team qualifying tournament with fellow Pacific Island nations, with the top 2 ranked teams making it to the World Cup in 2008. Carmont will also play against England and France with the Samoan side next month in the UK. Meanwhile, the next generation of Knights players are well in the hunt for a premiership, with the club's Jersey Flegg side to play the Dragons on Sunday for a spot in the grand final. 5'8" Scott Giroux knows he'll be a watched man, given he's the side's leading point scorer.
I'd say they'll be targeting me in a little bit of defence. I'm not the biggest bloke out there, so I'll probably have a few big boys coming at me.
I guess you enjoy the challenge, eh?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, if it was easy, you wouldn't do it, so I love the challenge.
It's Lower Hunter Rugby League's last big grand final day tomorrow under its own steam, with the organisation merging with Maitland All Age from next season. While the Premier League hockey's 2 fiercest rivals, Norths and Souths, face off tomorrow in the decider for the 5th consecutive time. In the women's, it's between Regals and Maitland.
Angry fishermen gathered today to discuss what they see as a slap in the face by Port Stephens Council. The public submission period for the government's controversial marine park plan closed today, and it's been revealed that in the council's submission it asked for a ban on commercial netting for conservation reasons. The industry says the councillors have no idea of the impact that request could have.
The commercial fishermen up here supply half the fish to our cooperative, and it could mean the end of our depots in Nelson Bay and Tea Gardens, because without the netting it would mean the end of the commercial fishing industry.
Those 2 co-ops at Tea Gardens and Nelson's Bay produce $5 million worth of fish product every year. So you're talking about 100 jobs. That's a lot of families to lose out of a community and a lot of heartache.
Council General Manager Peter Gessling told NBN Today that as far as he knew, a netting ban wouldn't have much effect at all. But Labor candidate for the Bay, Aaron Beasley, will tell his government's Marine Park Authority to ignore Council's request.
It was done without any forethought. There was no consultation with professional fishermen or with the co-ops or people affected by it.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Hands out for me, please.
5 weeks ago, Margaret McKay suffered a stroke at home. Doctors say the 73-year-old had a clot in the main artery to the left side of the brain.
When Margaret first came to hospital, via the ambulance, she had complete paralysis of the right-hand side of the body and she couldn't talk at all.
But as you can see, her recovery has been remarkable. She's almost 100% and is heading home tomorrow. Margaret's success story shows just how important rapid identification and treatment of stroke can be. In a state first, Newcastle ambulance officers now carry out a pre-hospital assessment and radio ahead to notify the stroke unit that a patient could be eligible for the latest stroke treatment. The Ambos therefore speeding up the entire process and helping improve the patient's outcome, as was the case with Margaret.
It's really all about time. We have, from onset of symptoms, we have 3 hours to deliver the entire treatment to the patient who's suffering from the stroke.
On arrival, the stroke team quickly assesses, scans and then treats suitable patients with a powerful clot-dissolving drug.
The clot can be dissolved, the blood flow can return to the brain and the patient's impairment, their loss of speech, their loss of function in arm, face, leg resolves.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Professor Ian Fraser is the 2006 Australian of the Year. He was recognised for helping to invent a cervical cancer vaccine, which is now available in Australia. But tonight, the professor will be speaking at the Hunter Medical Research Institute's Cancer Conference about harnessing the immune system to help protect ourselves against cancer.
Well, partly what I'm going to talk about is the 25% of cancers that are caused by infections that we might reasonably be able to get vaccines to prevent.
Sometimes miracles really do happen, with a cancer patient riddled with deadly melanoma spontaneously getting better. Their own body fights off the disease without drugs or radiation treatment. And that's led scientists, including Professor Fraser, to research the effects of boosting the immune system further with the help of a vaccine.
I think we're probably going to need specific vaccines, particularly to prevent infection. We already do a bit of immune system boosting to help treat cancer. Sometimes that treatment can be specific for a particular cancer, but sometimes it's just designed to ramp up the immune system a bit.
He says a quarter of cancers are also caused by what we do to our own bodies, warning that smoking, sun exposure and eating the wrong foods are also major contributing factors. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Four teams are left in the competition, and I can honestly say I can't separate them. Such is the depth, quality and strike power of each side. Don't be totally sucked in by last week's performance by the Dragons and the Broncos and forget about the Storm and the Bulldogs having their week off. Anyway, let's have a look. Friday night, the Bulldogs take on the Broncos. Here are the two most physical packs that you could put together. The Broncos are huge across the board. They destroyed the Knights last week and will be on a high from that. Carmichael Hunt will start at fullback, and that's a positive for them, who have been impressive in the last two starts against the Bulldogs, winning on both occasions, the last one being a big score. But for the records, the Broncos have only won one of their last 8 games in the final series, and their opponents, the Bulldogs, well, they have great final series tradition. They go on with the job. The possible return of Roy Zatazi and Rennie Matua will be a boost. Amelie Mason and Sonny Bill are the keys. However, saying all that, I'm going for the Broncos. Then Saturday, Dragons and the Storm. The Dragons look so good. They're peaking right now, and even their less profile players are in form. Fullback Clint Greenshields is a great example of that. Riles and Bailey in form together at the same time. Hasn't happened for years. Gasney is back. Their coach Nathan Brown is more relaxed this time round and learnt a lot from last year. The list goes on and on. But in their last 8 games against the Storm, the Dragons have won only 1. The Storm have the wood over them and will start favourites in my mind. Although there is a genuine concern that the Storm have held their hand up all year in respects to setting the benchmark for the rest to follow, and I wonder if their arm is getting a little bit tired. So it's the Broncos and the Storm for mine to be in the grand final. I'll catch you next week for all the grand final action.
It was a spring clean of monumental proportions. 200 men, women and children from Swansea and Caves Beach banded together to give the grounds of Swansea High a day-long, all-inclusive makeover.
Our version of Backyard Blitz or Schoolyard Blitz is producing some wonderful results. It's a culmination of 12 months worth of work.
Gardens were planted while outdoor shelters were given a new lease on life. Barren patches of playgrounds were transformed into fenced landscape locations, and graffiti was scoured from buildings and blasted from furniture. The school enlisted the help of local businesses and church groups to accomplish the task after receiving no help from the government.
People can sit around and say what should happen and state government should supply money to do schools up. The reality is that it's not going to happen at the speed that everybody expects.
And despite what was obviously sweaty work, it seemed everyone was happy to pitch in.
And this is a great community outcome because it builds community spirit. It provides a role model for the kids at the school.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
You haven't lost it though, mate. 4 wickets, not going too bad.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're all batting to the script.
After a tight start, the goals came in a hurry, with Daniel Edge finding the net for Souths, while David Wilmot replied just a minute later. But Norths were their own worst enemy, gifting their rivals a chance to regain the lead almost immediately, which Scott Howard took. John Finance is never far from the score sheet, and just before the break, he added one to the count as well. In a reversal to the major semi-final, it was Souths who had total control, and midway through the second term, they added 2 more goals, with Ben King among the scorers. Norths grabbed one back, but it was Souths winning their 3rd straight grand final. What a thriller in the women's decider, after both.
It's the first time Tara and Robert Skinner have returned to their home since it was destroyed by fire on Thursday. Today they began the heartbreaking task of sorting through their home's charred remains. Tara was outside with her youngest son when the blaze ignited.
My 4-year-old came out and told me there was a big fire, and I thought it might have been on television, so I ran in, but it was all over the curtains, and so I just grabbed him and ran out.
Within 5 minutes, the house was engulfed by flames and beyond saving by the time the firefighters arrived. The Skinners are now organising counselling sessions for their sons, with 4-year-old Riley taking the loss particularly hard.
He won't talk or eat, or he just doesn't want to come back, and Tyler has seen it, but he didn't take it very well. So we thought we'd get them someone to talk to before they come back.
Luckily for the Skinners, the Clarencetown community has offered its full support.
Some of the kids from the preschool have given toys for the boys, and one little boy's school did a collection for uniforms and clothes.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Breast cancer is the main cancer killer for women in the country, and so we thought that was very much a worthwhile cause.
Doing his best to break a smile today for fans, it was tough going for Joel Griffiths, who now faces a 2-week stint on the sideline.
You wouldn't be able to talk to me properly last night because I just would have said so many things I would have regretted.
Griffiths believes the pictures tell the story. Having been booked earlier in the match against Central Coast, he was marched late in the game, his second send-off in 4 weeks, after he was ruled to have dived in the penalty area. The club wants to appeal, but it appears to have no avenue under FFA rules.
We're going to see how it goes, but I'm not going to count on it.
He wasn't the only one in trouble. Captain Paul Ocon will miss next weekend's match as well, after he was sent off for this tackle. All this on football's Fair Play weekend. Earlier, the Central Coast broke a 544-minute goal-scoring drought when John Hutchinson found a way past Ben Kennedy. Milton Rodriguez was the first to really test the Coast's gloveman. But Denny Vukovic was like a wall at the back for the coast, repelling plenty of chances as Newcastle searched for its first win. Finally, it was Griffiths, the man who broke through for his first goal of the season. But it was his hero to villain act that is the talking point, as his side remains winless this season.
You haven't lost it though, mate. 4 wickets, not going too bad.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're all batting to the script.
Controversial send-offs, injury and a thrilling draw. It's really just another week in the life of Newcastle Jets coach Nick Theodorakopoulos, who's quickly become used to such adversity. Left seething over some refereeing decisions at the weekend, he'll be without Joel Griffiths for 2 weeks with suspension, while he couldn't understand how Milton Rodriguez wasn't awarded a penalty for this.
We all have said that we've contributed to some of the poor results or not winning over the last few months. But I think I can safely say that the referee certainly contributed to the loss of 2 competition points.
Life gets no easier on the injury front either, with Stuart Michalek unable to train today with a leg problem, while Andrew Durante is still flawed by a virus. The coach says it's only his team's positive attitude in light of such problems that's keeping him sane as he concentrates on the job at hand.
I can't put all my efforts into hoping that the FFA will see something that's blatantly wrong and try and rectify it.
Defender Stephen Old shapes as the new man to step in for suspended skipper Paul Ocon, with Nicky Carl to assume the captaincy.
After a decade of approving billions of dollars worth of defence spending, today it was the Treasurer's turn to discover how the Air Force spends those taxpayer dollars, like trying the first of the new $93 million Hornet flight simulators. Having passed the medical and donned his flying suit, Peter Costello gave some of the RAAF's elite aviators of 3 Squadron an explanation of why he wanted to see their activities at close quarters. His pilot for today's mission, Wing Commander Joe Yavasi, left the Treasurer in no doubt of what he could expect.
It'll be an experience.
After the sortie to Coolar near Mudgee involving high and low altitude simulated air combat and ground bombing at speeds reaching 850 kilometres an hour, the Air Force had an influential supporter.
You realise that there's a lot more to an aircraft than just the flying machine. It's the software that goes into it that really makes it the fighting machine that it should be.
And what a story he'll have to tell primary school pupils tomorrow when the Treasurer attends the annual Life Skills Trade Fair at Maitland. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The night sky was alive with embers and obscured by smoke as the bushfire's flames consumed everything in their path. Firefighters believe yesterday's blaze was deliberately set.
And information from firefighters and residents that someone on a motorcycle lit 2 fires.
20 crews comprising 100 firefighters battled the blaze in what were extreme conditions. Gateshead residents watched on as the fire approached their homes, but a combination of early prevention measures and 3 backburns conducted last night kept the flames at bay.
We haven't had any evacuations of people from their residences, and whilst we've had some problems with smoke on the roads and had some roads closed, apart from that, no damage suffered.
The fire was contained at 10:30 last night, more than 12 hours after it started. The blaze destroyed 280 hectares of bushland and at times came within 20 metres of homes. Firefighters are now bracing themselves for what's expected to be a bad season ahead, with meteorologists predicting a hot, dry spring followed by a long, hot summer.
Yesterday was the hottest September I think we've had for 100 years. Certainly very unusual at this early time in the year, and not even bushfire danger period. So no, it's not looking good.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A smouldering mess is all that remains of the 76-year-old homestead after last night's fire. Built from blue gum and red mahogany, the timber house went up quickly as staff ensured that guests and co-workers made it out safely.
I raced around the veranda to the front here, got the people out of their rooms because the flames was coming up the other side of the veranda towards them and they were fast asleep. So I said give it another 10 minutes, they would have been gone.
The fire broke out around 11 o'clock last night, but it was almost midnight before firefighters could reach the isolated spot and get to work.
We arrived here last night to find this guest house fully engulfed in flames. We had all the trucks from the Dungog Shire en route to here. The trucks arrived, we run out our hoses and helped the New South Wales Fire Brigade fight this blaze.
Guest house staff used what precious little water they had to hose down a large gas cylinder in danger of exploding. The guest house has operated continuously since 1930, and thanks to the efforts of firefighters, adjacent forest cabins weren't damaged. It's believed the fire started in a fuse box at the rear of the house and quickly spread into the roof, bringing a fiery end to the tourism icon. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There was little hiding it yesterday, and today Warren Shillings was hit with a reckless tackle charge that's rubbed him out of the biggest game of the season. He was instrumental in Newcastle's come-from-behind win against the Dragons, setting up Jonathan Wright to cross late in the match and help level things up. From there it was a field goal shootout, the Dragons going close before Newcastle's Scott Duro nailed the winner as they won 23-22. It's Souths still celebrating a hat-trick of Premier League hockey titles after defeating old rivals Norths at the weekend. David Willett scored both goals for Norths, but their real issue was at the back as they gifted Souths one to regain the lead through Scott Howard, before the likes of John Finance added to the count as they marched towards a 5-2 victory. It was much closer in the women's decider, with Maitland going ahead 2-1 at half-time before increasing the lead just after the break. Looking down and out, Teresa Blair's first goal reignited Regal's chances. Her second put them back on level terms. Forcing extra time, a short corner variation ended the same way, with Blair tapping in for a hat-trick for Regals to extract revenge for last year's loss.
Jacqueline Chadburn may have been just 15 years old when she died, but the impact her life had on her peers is clear. Since she was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago, her classmates have held annual concerts and fundraising drives for Canteen. Today was the fourth such concert and the last that will be hosted by her peers who are now in Year 12.
She passed away when we were in Year 10. And she was right behind Canteen, always supported it because they helped her out a lot. So since she died, we've really got behind it, just did all we can to raise money for it. Last year, we raised over $4,000, so hopefully this year we'll get even more.
A bandana fashion parade was held, illustrating that bandanas not only make attractive head garments, they can also be worn as skirts, shirts, bags and capes. Students put extra effort into this year's fundraiser to ensure that the tradition continues once they graduate.
Definitely raise more money and get everyone in the school behind it more so than any other year so that they can keep going with it, because we're scared we're going to lose the tradition.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
This is all that remains of the 10 by 3 metre van after the fire erupted at the Freeman Springs Caravan Park at 4 this morning. Firefighters from 4 brigades arriving to find the rented dwelling engulfed in flames.
And we used most of the water on those 4 trucks to extinguish the fire, which indicates it was a fairly intense blaze when they actually got here.
A family of 3 who'd been residents for about 5 months were inside, but only one survived.
It appears that the people that were inside were trying to get out, and obviously one of the persons has escaped from the van, and they're obviously being treated at the John Hunter Hospital.
Fortunately, he wasn't seriously injured. He does have smoke inhalation.
The survivor, a teenage boy, lost his mother aged in her 30s and a sister aged about 12, despite frantic attempts by neighbours to rescue them. One resident who attempted to rescue the mother and her daughter has told NBN News while he was able to get close to the pair, he was unable to pull them from the burning van. The exasperation of being unable to free the pair, leaving him devastated. The tragedy took its toll on other residents of the 36-van park at rural Freeman's Waterhole. Chaplains from the emergency services involved, counselling them for most of the day. As forensic investigators search for clues to how the fire started, Homicide Squad police from Sydney were called in, as was the Fire Brigade's accelerant sniffer dog. With a cause still not established, the fire was this afternoon still considered suspicious, and it brought this warning from fire investigators.
It's often very difficult to escape a fire in a caravan, which is the main reason why we strongly recommend fire alarms and smoke detectors in all buildings.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Come January, there'll be 54 new interns using Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital as a training base.
Surgery, medicine, the emergency department, psychiatry.
The John Hunter is home to the state's busiest emergency department. The hospital is one of the most popular places to train, and of course there's always room for more doctors.
We're hopeful of getting as many of the 19 mid-year graduates from the University of Newcastle that come out halfway through 2007 as well.
The first-year medical graduates will rotate between hospitals in the Hunter New England network. In a New South Wales first, 15 of the state's new interns will receive extended terms in rural areas. In Hunter New England's case, 3 will train with GPs in Bingra.
What we've said is that the majority of people work in the community. Why don't we train people in the community?
They'll be among 10 interns to base themselves in Tamworth next year, electing to train there under the new preferential scheme for rural doctors.
It means that people that want to come to a rural hospital are actually able to choose that first.
Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
For the past year, these 600 students have been collecting and earning mutuals, a school currency that was developed to complement the federal government's financial literacy program.
They're looking at teaching Australians the wise use and management of their money, and what better way to do it than to actually allow kids to earn their own income and then dispose of it.
Today, they had the opportunity to spend their mutuals at the Life Skills Trade Fair and Technology Quest in Maitland, with Federal Treasurer Peter Costello on hand to offer financial advice. But while he was happy to discuss construction techniques, the benefit of energy-saving devices and the cost of housing, he was non-committal on long-standing calls for the federal government to help redevelop Energy Australia Stadium's Western Grandstand.
We're always open to submissions in relation to that. We're always looking for careful representations from the community, and our ears are always open.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It was a Newcastle landmark, the Wynn's department store, which was established in 1901. These days, the Hunter Street site is home to the Aculon Apartments, but the ground floor will soon return to its retail roots, with a new IGA supermarket approved by council. Business people say it'll fill a major void in the city.
Even 5 years ago there was demand for it, but now even more so with all the development, residential development going on. And we've had small corner store type of grocery stores, but none with a meat department and a good range to look at.
In 2004, more than 6,000 people called Newcastle's CBD home, but since then the number of new apartments has escalated dramatically as thousands more choose an inner city lifestyle.
Now, over time, it became basically a commercial centre and a retail centre. Times have changed, and what we're trying to do is encourage the city centre to become not only a place where people work, but also they live and they play.
Fit-out is already underway, the supermarket expected to be complete by the end of November. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It wasn't pretty and plenty heavy, but you couldn't prize the World Championship trophy off Jenny's screen. And why not? After taking so long to win it, the Australians are keen to keep it for a while longer yet. Her stay at home, though, more a whirlwind trip.
Recoup, catch up with family and friends, and then back on a plane here on Friday to head to Italy to play with my European team Parma.
It's there Screen believes it would finally settle in that she's a world champion. The final itself is still something of a blur given the mass celebrations that followed. Coming off the bench, Screen played some important minutes against Russia in the decider. Australia didn't have a poor player on court, and Screen's scrambling typified the attitude of the new world champs. The gold medal sure to stay close to her heart for a long while yet.
Once I'm over there in Italy and enjoying that over there and the new part of my career, I'll sit back and go, wow, I've done an amazing thing with an amazing team and we've made history, and to be a part of that is just sensational.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Yeah, it's a great squad. I know all the boys. I've trained and played with them before, so it's just going to be another experience for me.
6 months ago, Len Everingham's boat Alibi lay in ruins following a racing accident. Now the Speed Demon and his craft are just days away from returning to competition. The Port Stephens Regatta Club has hosted an annual event since 1908, although the boats and getting to the event have changed dramatically.
They used to sail their work punts down the Wallace Lakes and bullock team them across into the Mile Lakes. Take a week to travel down to Mungo Brush.
Now in its 7th year at Karua, the event is expected to draw a strong crowd, as well as entries from Sydney, Queensland and Victoria for the 900-metre 3-lap races. Everingham is the defending Peter Gimmett Memorial Champion, but the Gold Cup is this year's target. With top speeds of 240 kilometres an hour, safety is one of the priorities.
I actually have a parachute on my life jacket, which is to pull you up slower before you hit the water. And then you wear helmet restraints and full suits.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Exactly what sparked the deadly inferno at the Freeman Springs Caravan Park today remained the subject of an intense police forensic investigation, with inquiries so far pinpointing the kitchen as the possible location where the outbreak began. Investigators focused on that area for clues. Senior officers won't speculate on whether the fire was accidental or arson as they await the results of the forensic work. Metres away from the scene, a memorial of floral and written tributes has been established to the victims, Mari Langdon and her daughter Emily. As the tragedy in their midst sinks in for the close-knit community of the Freeman Springs Park, the residents are supporting each other through the ordeal.
And there's still a lot of crying and grieving going on, but everybody's knit, communicating together as one little happy family.
And today they publicly thanked the chaplains from the emergency services and the Hunter New England health counsellors who've assisted them through the past 36 hours, describing the help as invaluable.
We couldn't have done without them. We appreciate every minute they've spent with us.
The only survivor of the fire, Ms Langdon's son Mitchell, has been released from hospital and is being cared for by family. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Unregistered service departments are becoming a serious headache for Newcastle's accommodation industry. Managing Director of Quest Service Departments, Brian Stevenson, says there's around 1,000 illegitimate operators across Newcastle.
It's had such an impact that managers of hotels and motels and bed and breakfast and service departments now meet on a regular basis to discuss this problem. And yes, it's a big worry that it's affecting our income.
Registered service departments have to comply with stricter building regulations, fire and safety procedures, and pay higher insurance rates than residential apartment owners. Newcastle City Council is now developing a strategy to crack down on unregistered operators. The Lord Mayor says if residential apartment owners continue to do the wrong thing, they could face heavy penalties.
And the first thing would be a letter of warning, which may or may not achieve anything.
but ultimately it would end up in the Land and Environment Court.
And council won't have too much trouble tracking them down.
It's pretty easy to go to some websites and find out who is advertising these alleged service departments that don't comply.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
There was a full guard on duty at Fort Scratchley this afternoon, and when the new ship Maitland came into view, she was given a loud Newcastle welcome. Maitland will be the 6th of 12 Armidale-class patrol boats commissioned into the Navy as part of a $550 million contract. The 56-metre all-aluminium vessel with a company of 21 has a former submarine commander at the helm who wasn't expecting to be fired at.
Well, it's my first time, but no. Look, we had all the guys up on the upper decks as well. You might have seen them all in their whites, and that's a sign that we're friends and that our guns are all unmanned. And like I said, our first time here, we're extremely excited, and the ship is running really well.
As well as being named after the city of Maitland, the name also recognises the wartime naval installations in Newcastle's East End, where 84-year-old John Bredden served as a signalman. John's daughter, Jacqueline Rice, officially named the vessel.
It was very emotional when I saw that beautiful ship in front of me, and I realised that I was the person who was going to name her and set her on her journey for life, her working life. It was wonderful.
And on Friday, the commissioning's in the afternoon. And Saturday we're marching into Maitland, all singing, all dancing, and the whole crew will march through into the town there. Will be received by the Mayor.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. Cessnock may now be wine country, but the area is still true to its roots as the coalfields. Western the location today to record reenactment scenes for inclusion in the documentary Lockout, the story of the 1920-1930 dispute between miners and colliery owners, a story that producers believe must be told.
So 5 years ago, we started looking into it, and the more and more we got into it, the more and more we realised just how important the story was for now.
Miners' Union stalwart Coogan Frame and one of the last Rothbury veterans, Jack O'Shea, have contributed to Lockout. Jack won't forget December 16, 1930, when the police and the miners who were determined to remove scabs from Rothbury Colliery clashed and one rioter was shot dead.
With the result, they beat us back, and as we run in retreat, we heard the fire, the shooting going on. They were shooting us in the back.
Coogan Frame was a teenager but says lessons from Rothbury need to be learnt by current generations, especially in the era of the Howard government's work choices legislation.
I think the young generation are not sticking up for their rights. They've done, as Jack old say, everything we fought for and lost time for and lost blood for, they've given away.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
They finished the season as minor premiers, but the Newcastle Jersey Flegg side isn't underestimating their grand final opponent, Penrith.
We only played them a couple of rounds ago and they gave us a bit of a touch-up. We had a fair number of boys out though, so yeah, we're pretty confident, but yeah, also wary of them.
Newcastle has made only one change from the side that beat the Dragons in the preliminary final. 2005 Australian schoolboy representative Matt Cooper comes onto the bench, replacing the suspended Warren Shillings.
Shillo, he's a big hitter, so but Cooper, the bloke coming in, he'll be sweet. We're going to miss him, but what can you do? It's football, I guess.
With junior kangaroo places up for grabs, Sunday's grand final will be the last chance to impress. But the boys say they're focused on their blue and red jerseys, not the green and gold.
I'd much rather win a premiership, but yeah, it'd be a great bonus. I'd be absolutely thrilled, but at the moment we're just worrying about Sunday.
The team leaves Energy Australia Stadium 3:30 Saturday afternoon, bound for Sydney. Meanwhile, departing first-grade winger Brian Carney has been named in Great Britain's 25-member Tri-Nations squad for the upcoming series with Australia and the Kiwis. The Dally M Winger of the Year begins his stint with the Gold Coast Titans following the tournament. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.